Earlier this week, SoFi was ranked one of the top 5 banks in the US, and this ranking comes just 1 week before their Q1 earnings report, where they're expected to deliver a second consecutive quarter of profitability. It comes as a result of heightened awareness on the SoFi brand and mission statement at every single NBA game currently, at a time when the stock is trading at near 2024 lows, with the stock price down 26% year to date. So what's going on? Let's talk about it. This was somewhat of a quiet news week for SoFi, just 5 trading days away from earnings as of this recording. However, due to macro events, the wider market has pulled back. The stock is down 3% on the week. It closed off at $7.11. We've seen some choppy price action over the past few days. The stock really has been trading within a very tight range of 30 cents, between $7.10 and $7.40. Just very low volume in between there. Before we jump onto the news week, I just want to call out, I do these SoFi weekly videos every single Friday. If you do enjoy them and you want to stay tuned for more SoFi updates, I suggest you subscribe to the channel for more. Okay, so the main thing I want to start off with is the macro, because that's the reason why the stock price is down in the short term. And that has absolutely nothing to do with SoFi itself. There's rising tensions across geopolitical conflicts between nation states half a world away. Basically, over the past week, we saw Israel and Iran escalating conflicts, uncertainty in the market as to what would be the response from all of that. We saw oil spiking, we saw gold hitting new highs, we saw the market having pullbacks, Bitcoin crashing, the indexes crashing. And so that's one of the huge reasons why SoFi had that performance this week, is that it was dragged down by the macro. However, the thing I want to say is that none of this affects the fundamentals of the company. There were, however, some company-specific news this week, and those were quite positive. On Tuesday morning, we got a press release of a partnership between Galileo and Rapid Finance. This press release reads, quote, Rapid Finance, a small business banking platform helping businesses find customized financing solutions, in collaboration with Galileo Financial Technologies, today announced the launch of the Rapid Access MasterCard. This MasterCard program is the first program sponsored by SoFi Bank and managed by Galileo, giving eligible SMB customers quick and flexible access to their funds when they need it most. Now, I just want to pause here for a second because I think this is an interesting highlight. This partnership is simultaneously powered by Galileo, but also sponsored by SoFi Bank. And to my knowledge, I think this is the first time that we're seeing this type of collaboration. And this is really important because this is a collaboration between the banking side of the business and the technology side of the business. And the other interesting point here is one quick Google search will tell you that Rapid Finance is a sister company of Rocket Mortgage, which obviously, if we speculate, does open the door for much larger partnerships, but we are getting ahead of ourselves with that. Now, this press release continues to say that 77% of SMBs are concerned about their access to capital, and that this prepaid commercial card addresses this issue by providing SMBs with a flexible payment option. Through this program, SMB customers with an LOC in good standing can seamlessly and instantly access their funds to maintain their operations and pursue growth opportunities. It also highlights that holders can benefit from 24/7 instant access to these funds and basically providing working capital anytime and anywhere. So the partnership itself, I don't think is unique. We've seen Galileo have similar partnerships. I mean, this is pretty solid to see. But the unique part, and that part that I found interesting, was the collaboration between Galileo and SoFi Bank with this one, because really that unifies the future vision for SoFi, right? We want to see more of these collaborations in the future because that gives us a good idea of how the banking side can be synergistic with the technology platform side. Moving on Tuesday, we saw the first day of the SoFi Playin tournament, which featured a ton of new marketing for SoFi. We saw consistent posting from the official NBA handle on all their social media accounts, on X, on TikTok, on Instagram. Even on X alone, I saw NBA posting 40 to 50 times a day, just play-by-play footage of all of the games that are going on that day. Every single post had the SoFi Playin hashtag. All of the games had SoFi branding everywhere, on the court, signage, all the way down to the logos on the leaderboards and just logos on the chairs. Just absolutely fantastic to see the awareness. SoFi was running commercials on all of these games. I mean, I posted about this on X as well. I was watching most of these games myself. And all the way down to even the NBA account having the SoFi Playin hashtag literally in the account description of their X profile. I can't stress enough the impact that this has on that brand awareness, especially with SoFi running commercials on these games, and ultimately the impact that it's going to have on member additions. Keep in mind though, these members are going to reflect in Q2 because Q1 has been over for about 3 weeks now. So it's not really that important for Q1. Those numbers have been locked and loaded for a while. This is all Q2 additions that we're seeing. And I also posted earlier this week around the member additions because just looking at the iOS App Store rankings, we see SoFi consistently climbing in those downloads. And yes, I do understand that that's a very volatile measure. I think Apple consistently shifts them out every week based on the App Store downloads. But we did see SoFi hitting new highs in terms of the volume of downloads. I think SoFi hit number 26 in finance. And I think all of this is attributable to the NBA and the positive impact that we're seeing from a brand awareness perspective, right? It's no trivial thing to have the official NBA account, which has millions of followers, post about your brand 50 or 60 times a day. We just won't be able to measure the exact impact of how many of these views and impressions are going to translate to members until Q2. Because Q2 is when we lock in the member edition accounts. But so far, just tangentially from the outside looking in, it's looking pretty positive. Moving on Wednesday, I saw a post on Reddit that SoFi had integrated with Zelle. This was one of the highest requested features that the company had been working on for quite a while, and users reported seeing this on their app. But within hours, that post on Reddit was taken down and the conversation pivoted to potentially somebody might have leaked this information, or it might have been a manual error by a developer who was in testing for this feature. And while I don't know the exact specifics, I take it to mean that we're getting closer to launch. Even though it was a false alarm, even though it might have been a leak, what we do know is that this work has already been completed to some degree, and it's possibly in testing, which means that an official announcement for that feature release could be around the corner. So we'll monitor that as we go on. But I want to move on now to the major piece of news for the week. Earlier this week, SoFi made the top list of the Forbes leaderboard for the best banks in the world. Now, that's a bold claim, so let me read a little bit on the methodology for that claim. Quote, Forbes partnered with the market research company Statista to survey more than 49,000 people across 33 different countries and asked them, what do you like and what don't you like about a bank? Now, the respondents, they could evaluate the banks that they're either a part of right now or that they've had an account within the past 3 years or that they know about through family and friends. Participants relayed their overall satisfaction with each bank, whether they would recommend it to others, and rated it in 5 different areas. Number 1, trustworthiness. Number 2, terms and conditions, customer service, digital services, and financial advice. And then all of these results were put into a scoring system with the highest scores making the final list. This includes 403 banks around the world. Now, if we look at the top 5 banks worldwide, obviously SoFi is not going to be on this list, but when we filter with the top 5 US banks, we can see SoFi right down there in the 5th slot. Now, this was based on satisfaction with the bank, so it makes sense why SoFi would not be in the worldwide list because there was 49,000 people surveyed across 33 different countries. SoFi pretty much only operates in the US, and so it limits the amount of people that could potentially even know about the SoFi brand. But in the US, by contrast, I think it's pretty huge and pretty impactful to say that this little bank reached such heights in terms of user satisfaction. And I made a post about this saying that Anthony Noto consistently reiterates this idea that SoFi is going to be a top 10 bank, and that's a matter of when, not if. And this technically does count as SoFi being in a top leaderboard for banks in the US. The only difference, of course, is that this is based on satisfaction, and Anthony Noto is talking about deposits, which is a very, very different measure. So I don't want you to conflate those two things. But if you do notice this list that is based on satisfaction, none of the top 5 banks are here. You don't see a JP Morgan, you don't see a Citi, you don't see a Wells Fargo, you don't see a Bank of America, and those names are the biggest in terms of deposits. But they're definitely not the biggest in terms of satisfaction from this customer survey perspective. So I still think it's fantastic for SoFi to be one of the top names in the US from a satisfaction perspective, because it does help them even further with brand awareness. For NerdWallet to have SoFi in the top list and for Forbes to have SoFi in the top list, that's a huge impact, right? It speaks volumes, especially for somebody who doesn't really know anything about the brand, who's just turning on the Lakers game and sees SoFi's logo and decides to Google search them. Obviously, you're going to see all these lists highlighting SoFi's satisfaction across their users. So that brand perspective, I think, is a big deal. But like I said, this was a more relatively quiet news week, and that's to be expected. As we head further into earnings, you're going to have quiet periods in terms of news. Just a reminder, on SoFi News and on earnings, I'm going to be talking about them later tonight on the SoFi Weekly podcast at 10 p.m. on this channel. I'll also be live streaming the earnings the morning of April 29th on this channel. And interestingly enough, I also put out a poll earlier this week on earnings and sentiment from a stock price perspective. Now, we have to understand that that stock price and company fundamentals are two very detached things. And right now they're at a pretty big variance. There's no signal between the price and the company. The company is executing every single week and the stock price is down 26%. It makes no sense. But regardless, I made a poll based on the sentiment of stock price. And I basically asked respondents, what's going to hit first, 650 or 850? And 1,500 people responded to that survey, and the results were really closer than I thought they were going to be. 53% of respondents said that we're going to hit 850 before we hit 650. Now, considering that the majority of the stuff that I post on X is SoFi related, I thought that number was lower than I expected it to be. And ultimately, I think that speaks to the sentiment being so low. The stock has been fading downwards. It's in the low $7 range. The volume is non-existent as we head into earnings. And that's definitely reflected in the stock price. It's reflected in sentiment and how people view the stock in general. As we head into earnings, of course, that's going to change. Especially because we're going to have more pieces of news, we're going to have the financial results coming out, and so there's going to be more information for people to act on behalf of. Of course, we're going to see how that changes next week as we head into earnings, and of course after the earnings results. So make sure you tune into this channel on those particular dates. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you next time.